We all hate bye weeks, but this particular bye week comes at the perfect time for Miami.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On this loaded episode, we'll talk some recruiting because it looks as though the Hurricanes are poised to avoid losing a commitment in a flip that we had been expecting for the past couple of weeks. Miami might be dodging a bullet here. We'll explain. We'll talk about the keys, some of the little things and the big things that have been key to Miami's success so far in their 4-0 start. And a lot of that ties into this bye week coming at a really good time. And I want to emphasize, I'm talking about this particular bye week. This bye week, after 4 games Miami has played, 3 of those were against teams that have been ranked in the top 25 at some point this year. 2 of them ranked at the time you played them. Notre Dame was top 10, top 6. USF was a top 20 team when Miami faced them. Florida, obviously, lost some games and they were out of that top 25, but a really talented football team. And Hurricanes have left it all out there physically. The way this team has been blocking, the way this team has been out muscling opponents, the way they've been playing bully ball, you don't mind having a bye week after all of that. Not to mention, about to face the opponent that you're going to see week 5 in your first road game of the year, by the way, in Tallahassee, where they're going to be screaming that war chant for 3+ hours. Raucous crowd going to be there at Doak Campbell Stadium. You don't mind having the extra weekend off to mend your bodies, mend your minds, because a lot of mental exertion has come into this great Miami start, and going up against a very unique and talented running game that Florida State has, going up against a quarterback like Tommy Castellanos, who, if you let him, can really kill you with his legs. You like the idea that, Miami's defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, who historically has done very well against running quarterbacks, is going to have that extra week to scheme. In fact, I think, a week and a half from now, the chess match that we're going to get between Corey Heatherman coaching Miami's defense and Gus Malzahn coaching Florida State's offense, that is going to be an awesome coordinator versus coordinator matchup, okay? Now, here's the thing. I say this particular bye week I like. The one that comes after this one in 2 weeks, that one sucks, okay? I don't mind having a bye week before Florida State after Miami's played in 4 games, 3 of those really big games. But what I don't like is right after you play FSU, you've got another bye week, and then you play Louisville. And from Louisville on, you don't have any more open dates, which means Miami is going to have to play 7 straight weeks of regular season games, 8 straight weeks if you make it to the ACC Championship game, which most people now expect Miami can probably do, which, for a physical team, and a lot of those games in the back 9 are going to be on the road. It's a road-heavy schedule the rest of the way. It's going to take a lot out of you. So I would much prefer coming out of this week 5 bye week for your next bye week to be, week 8 or 9, not week 7, right? 8, 9, 10, something like that. But, can't control the schedule, unfortunately. And, so much of what Miami has done so far this year, some of the keys, some of the little things this Hurricanes team has done have been keys to this 4-0 start, which now has Miami as the number 2 team in the country, according to the AP poll. Something I know the nation has taken notice of this. I haven't talked about this enough, but the way Miami's wide receivers block, that unit is so selfless. They are so well coached. They're willing to get physical, get dirty, put their bodies on the line to help the team run the football. remarkable job by Kevin Beard, the wide receivers coach, and of course, Mario Cristobal for all he does setting the culture. Maybe they get some tips from Alex Mirabal as well on that kind of stuff, especially Malachi Toney. I mean, y'all saw the clips of him blocking in the Florida game relentlessly. He's not one of the bigger bodies on the field, not to mention he just turned 18 years old less than a week ago. And Malachi Toney is out there physically dominating other grown men. Mario Cristobal said on an interview with ACC Network this week about Toney, quote, his level of professionalism is beyond his years, Cristobal said. So not only does Malachi Toney prepare impeccably for every single game and every single practice, he's a crisp route runner in addition to being a talented, explosive wide receiver. And he's also out there blocking his butt off. And that's the culture of Miami's receivers room. CJ Daniels, Ray Joseph, JoJo Trader. I hope we see him back soon. He's a capable blocker as well. He showed that in the Notre Dame game. These guys are willing to put their bodies on the line. And I was recently watching a clip from J.D. Piquel, who hosts a show on On3 Sports, saying the sign of a good culture in your program, as Howard Schnellenberger used to say, and Piquel likes to say, it's not a program, it's a program. But a sign of a great culture is when you've got receivers who are willing to block the way that Miami's do. So you could tell there's a lot of buy-in. And on that, the effort level and the determination level of Miami has not wavered so far. And I know we're 4 games into a really long season, so we need to see that continue. But, the way this team is wearing opponents down and just beating them in not only the battles of the muscle up front, but the battle of wills late in the game, I think is significant. And it's something, Akeem Mesidor takes it very seriously. You remember preseason, he wore that shirt with the slogan, enough on it. He meant enough of that narrative that Miami can't finish games and that Miami is not mentally strong. Enough of that. Francis Mauigoa brought up that same thing after the Florida game, that Miami wants to show that despite the national narratives, they are tough. They can finish games. They can finish seasons. They take this very personally. Miami's defensive line. This is obvious how good they are. They currently rank 2nd nationally in pass rushing. They create an average of 6.5 tackles for loss per game, which is I think that's top 40. But you consider, Miami hasn't played as many cupcake opponents as a lot of other teams out there have. They're doing really, really well creating havoc in the backfield. And also, the defensive backfield has been really good so far. We're going to see them get tested more throughout the season. And a name, I think I brought him up earlier this week, but a name that we've hardly mentioned is Xavier Lucas at corner, because they rarely throw in his direction. Honestly, the sign of a good cover corner is when we're not bringing up your name very often. And that's been Xavier Lucas. I mean, he hasn't had as many opportunities to make plays on the ball because they're not throwing at the guy because he's been covering so well. Now, on Miami's defense, no matter how bad you think Florida's offense is, for Miami, holding them to 61 passing yards, 80 rushing yards, 0 for 13 on 3rd downs. That is impressive, no matter how you feel about Florida's offense. Now, and I say that because I see a lot of flexing from Florida State fans about the running numbers that they just put up against Kent State. So if Florida State fans are allowed to brag about setting a team rushing record against Kent State, by the way, Kent State has lost 22 of their past 23 football games. I think it's okay for Miami to flex how good their defensive performances have been so far, including the one against Florida, where, Florida's offense, as bad as they've been this year, they were never worse than they were against Miami because Miami's defense completely shut them down. Right now, Ruben Hurricane Bain, who's been the shining star of Miami's defense, he's the projected number 1 overall draft pick by ESPN, projected number 2 by CBS Sports. We could reach a scenario where Bain, if he keeps playing the way he's playing, should be the number 1 overall pick. It just depends on if whoever's drafting first really needs a quarterback. They may, reach for a quarterback over the best overall player. We see that happen a lot. On3 Sports, by the way, on their Heisman poll has Ruben Bain 6th and Carson Beck 5th on their weekly Heisman poll. As we brought up a couple times, even though we are seeing Ruben Bain get mentioned on some Heisman lists, there's still no odds on Bain. So you still cannot currently bet on Ruben Bain to win the Heisman. I want to talk a little bit more about Miami's offense on the other side. Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown have been a couple of the biggest stories and what Miami can hopefully accomplish against the Florida State defense. We'll have recruiting notes later on as well. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For your Miami Hurricanes, Ruben Bain delivered in a big way. Bain against Florida, 7 tackles, 10 quarterback hurries, a half sack, a tackle for loss. When the pressure was on, Bain came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been paying attention week after week, that performance was not a fluke. Ruben Bain is on a streak. And just like Bain delivered for the Canes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every time you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 on DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period goes through November 18th. We're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Saturdays and Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. To the everydayers, make sure for your next listen you check out Locked On ACC. I co-host that show with Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. On our episode yesterday, we put out our ACC power rankings through 4 weeks. And we do have Miami in front. Got Florida State number 2, so that's going to be settled in Doak Campbell Stadium in about a week and a half's time. Although, Florida State's got to get through Virginia first. In Charlottesville on a Friday night. Could be tricky. Virginia's got a really good offense. I don't really have enough faith in Virginia's defense going up against Florida State's rushing attack. So I think Florida State is going to win. I just hope that Virginia can show us a few cracks, a few weaknesses, some vulnerabilities in Florida State that Miami can then exploit the following week. All right, so we were talking about Miami's defense. Here's some interesting stats on the offense, specifically the running game, which has been so good. Mark Fletcher Jr. has forced 18 missed tackles this season, which ranks him top 10 nationally. I think he's 8th in that category, forcing 8 missed tackles. And I think he forced at least 2 or 3 missed tackles on that one play, the 38-yard run against South Florida. He was like juking out everybody. That was a lot of fun to watch. And of course, we haven't even seen the actual shifty guy in Miami's backfield yet, because Jordan Lyle has, barely played. But you're going back to Lyle for a second. Another one of the reasons why I think this bye week comes at a really good time for Miami is you've got to think at some point, probably coming out of this bye, we're actually going to see Lyle, and we're hopefully going to see JoJo Trader at receiver, Lyle at running back, both back in the lineup. Mario Cristobal said this right after the Florida game where neither of those guys played, despite the fact that they warmed up. Cristobal said, quote, "Health was good, just wasn't great. A game like that, rock'em sock'em, we did the right thing by Jordan. JoJo's gotten healthy, just has to pick it up and practice more. He's almost all the way healthy. We still have some work to do." So I think specifically in the case of Lyle, it sounds like, not wanting to force him out there on a wet field probably had a lot to do with it. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in all 4 of the games, all at home, that Miami's played in so far, we've dealt with rain and wet field in all of those, unless like the Bethune-Cookman game as well, right? I don't remember that one as well as I remember the other 3, but I know in the other 3, There was rain. The South Florida game had almost a 2-hour-long weather delay in it. So I think we've had to deal with wet field conditions every time. I don't know what the forecast is going to be like October 4th in Tallahassee, but I'm hoping we get a chance to see a dry field for once for Miami, especially when you're bringing back some injured players. But, despite the fact that Jordan Lyle has been out, Miami's running game has been really good, despite missing the guy who actually started the opening game. Marty Brown, who's a human battering ram. I love this stat. Brown is averaging 2.96 yards after contact. There are some running backs in the country who wish they averaged that per carry. And Brown is averaging 2.96 after contact. And the great thing about Brown is that he showed it in the Florida game. He's not just a wrecking ball. Like, he's also got some explosiveness and some moves in space. Has become a really valuable receiver out of the backfield. I didn't really know coming in how much of that was in his arsenal, but he's an all-purpose, well-rounded back, Marty Brown, and one of the most impactful transfers that Miami has brought in. I mean, we're so lucky to have this guy. Not that luck has anything to do with it, because Miami had to actively recruit him and convince him in the transfer portal that this is where he should be. And Brown, what can Brown do for you? What can Brown do for the you has been the question. And the answer is a lot. All right, so here's a note on the Hurricanes in the ACC power rankings. Most power rankings out there, including mine that I put out on Locked On ACC, have Miami atop the Atlantic Coast Conference. There are a few power rankings out there, notably one from ESPN's Andrea Adelson that actually put Florida State on top. But every power ranking I've seen has Miami in the top two, number one or number two at worst. With the Clemson Tigers fading, they're already 0-2 in the ACC. They're essentially eliminated from the championship game. Like, we might finally see a year when Miami and FSU could possibly meet in the ACC championship game, although Georgia Tech would be the most likely team to spoil the party for either of them because they have a really easy conference schedule. Miami and Florida State play each other, so someone's got to lose that game. Georgia Tech doesn't play either of them. Louisville, I think, is another team to watch. They haven't really played anybody yet. SMU, who got to the championship game last year, doesn't nearly look as dangerous this season. So I think Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, possibly Louisville are like the four that are most likely to compete for an ACC championship spot. Maybe you could say Syracuse is a dark horse, but they lost their quarterback, Steve Angeli, for the year with a blown out Achilles. Although, Ricky Collins, who's the backup quarterback, barely lost that quarterback competition. So we'll see if Syracuse, who Miami does play this season, by the way, I think Miami hopefully will beat them. But Syracuse could, I guess, be another team to watch as well. Now, earlier this week, when I talked about impact transfers, you remember this was on Monday or Tuesday, and I asked you guys, our Locked On Canes listeners and the everydayers, if I leave anybody out, when I talk about the transfer players who have really helped this team, if I leave anybody out, let me know. And I left out somebody I should not have left out of that list. And that's place kicker Carter Davis. An impact transfer. Carter Davis, 4 for 4 so far this year on field goals with a long of 53 yards. And he also hit a clutch 48-yard game winner against Notre Dame. Davis is 4 for 4. He's 14 for 14 on extra points. He's also booming the kickoffs through the end zone, which we love. And Carter Davis, a great story, transferred in from FAU. A lot of us didn't expect he would win the job. We thought maybe he'd be the kickoff specialist, but that Bert Auburn would be the place kicker, the field goal kicker. Carter Davis won that job despite when he was at FAU, went 4 for 11 on field goals. Didn't sound like a percentage. Now, his holder, his snapper may have been I don't know what was going on up there in Boca, but 4 for 11 at FAU looks like a completely different kicker at Miami, and he's a tremendous story. Another note, I think the best is yet to come from tight end Elijah Lofton. I can't fully explain his slow start to the season, except for my suspicion, this is my opinion, that maybe he wasn't completely healthy to start the year. Looks to me like he's been working through something, just my opinion. But Lofton had a pretty big impact in the Florida game. catching 4 balls for 43 yards, moving the chains on a couple of key occasions. And also, he had that hurdle over a defender, which, brings your swagger up a little bit. So I think the longer this thing goes, I think the more involved Elijah Lofton is going to get in the passing game. I think that the Florida game was a sign of things to come, especially if teams are taking the deep stuff away, 2 high safeties. If Miami needs to go underneath, and Carson Beck is usually pretty good about taking what's given to him, I think we'll see a lot more Elijah Lofton moving forward. Just my take. Here's another thing I've noticed. Have you seen, guys, within the past week or so, have you seen Mario Cristobal on the interview circuit this week? So I saw Coach multiple different interviews. I saw him on the ACC football podcast with Roddy and EJ. I saw him on a couple of different On3 shows like Andy and Ari, and he was on with JD Piquel. And Cristobal, in all these interviews, did not crack a smile, not even once. He looks more intense than usual. And I appreciate the business-like approach from Coach. And I think my theory is that the media coverage on Miami is starting to reach those rat poison levels that Mario's mentor, Nick Saban, used to talk about when, the headlines are so great. Everything's like you don't want to buy into your own press clipping. So I think Mario Cristobal is going extra intense because he wants to send a message to his entire operation to stay humble and stay focused. But I've noticed, if you've seen some of these interviews when Mario's like sitting in the meeting room and he's on Zoom with these hosts, and like he looks like very solemn, very serious. I feel like he's doing that in a calculated way to try to just send out that air of intensity so far. And I hope it rubs off on everyone in that building. I did mention this already, but next Saturday at Doak Campbell Stadium, it's going to be Miami's first road game of the year, first of 5. So in practices until then, they're going to be blasting the Seminole War chant. If you're living anywhere in Coral Gables, you're going to hear that, like, it's so annoying because they play it very, very loud on the practice field. So the players are going to be really tired of that by the time they step into Doak. This will be Carson Beck's first time going up against Florida State. He's obviously played in many loud road environments during his time in the SEC, so I don't think the moment is going to be too big for him. And how about this for, the power of the brand, the power of the U? Miami versus Florida last weekend averaged 6.5 million viewers on ABC. Was the most watched college football game of week 4. Top in the ratings. College Game Day at Miami, that episode from 9 a.m. to noon, was College Game Day's second most watched regular season episode ever. In a show that's been around since 1987. That was the second most watched regular season episode ever. America cares about the Hurricanes. America cares about this team, whether they're rooting for Miami to win or whether they're hate watching. College football is better when Miami is relevant. And you're seeing, and listen, again, I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse here. Happy Miami's number 2. I'm happy they're playing well. I'm not going to say the U is, I'm not going to say that. Not going to use that B word until they win a 6th national championship. I'm not falling for that trap. So I'm still all about the work. I'm all about the progress. But I'm really happy with the fact that Miami's had a good start and America's paying attention. Whether they love us or they hate us, they care. Is Miami about to dodge a bullet with a possible recruiting flip? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and keep moving the game forward. In this week's moment that moved the game forward, I go with Marty Brown. Scored that touchdown, 1-yard run, little tush-push action to put Miami up 19-7 against Florida. That was essentially the game-winning touchdown. I know Miami added another one, but Marty Brown's performance on that drive, 13-play, 80-yard, call it the Marty Brown drive because he was all over that one. That was a defining moment for Shamar Marty Brown. And scored 2 touchdowns in the game, had over 150 total yards, would have had about 200 total yards had the SEC officials not taken that touchdown off the board for, a phantom stop of forward progress that they whistled. They admitted to Coach Cristobal they made a mistake, by the way. So Marty had a great day despite that long run getting taken off the board. And he has just been such a great addition here. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. By the way, make sure you guys are checking out every single Thursday on Fire TV, the college football kickoff show from Locked On. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local expert. It's a college football preview show only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only available on Fire TV. All right, you guys recall a few weeks ago, there was, and this was definitely legitimate reporting, that there was a sense, maybe there still is a sense, that 4-star Miami Hurricanes class of 2027 commit Kenton Dobson III was going to flip to the North Carolina Tar Heels. And Dobson, he's an interesting topic for a number of different reasons. He's a fantastic player. He's currently the highest rated class of 2027 Miami verbal commit, but he's going to reclassify to 2026. It hasn't officially happened yet, but it's going to happen. So Kenton Dobson is going to be a guy who's going to be at a college, hopefully this college, less than a year from now. He'll probably enroll in spring, a year early. And he's a phenomenal football player, but there had been a lot of momentum. I'm sure a lot of it's probably NIL related, that Bill Belichick was going to flip Kenton Dobson and reclassify him and get him to the North Carolina Tar Heels. According to a new update from Kane Sport, Stephen Wagner, who covers recruiting for On3, not so fast, my friends. Dobson has told Kane Sport, they write, on several occasions over the past several weeks, he still feels good about his commitment to the Canes. He returned to Miami this past Saturday evening for the Hurricanes game against Florida after last visiting for the season opener and against Notre Dame. Quote, "It's the love, the legacy I want to build over there," he told Kane Sport. "It's mostly that, the relationships. I love how they show. That's my hometown team," he said. Now, they do right. He hasn't fully shut the door on the Tar Heels, though, and he enjoyed his time. He made a visit to Chapel Hill last week. Head coach Bill Belichick's success in the NFL and track record with elite defensive backs in New England speaks to him, he said. Now, again, there's a lot that's working in Miami's favor here. You know, Kenton Dobson is a Miami fan, grew up a Miami fan. His parents, his mother actually passed, and he honored his mother. I think it was on her birthday that he committed to Miami in the first place. So he's got Miami ties. He's a South Florida player from Miami, New Orleans. It's a lot easier to visit here, stay closer to family. There's a lot working in Miami's favor. Not to mention, and this is just me reading between the lines here. If he's been paying attention to North Carolina this season, it's not a whole lot to like. Now, I guess you could say, hey, maybe old Chapel Bill is building something that's going to be great in a couple of years, but North Carolina is bad. Like they've played 2 legitimate games this year. They just got blown out at UCF. You know, this is not your 2017, alleged national champion UCF. This is, an okay UCF team. They got blown out. They got blown out at home by TCU to start the season. Like, UNC is a mess right now. Miami is the opposite of a mess. And, hometown team, really good culture right now at Miami, really good defensive back coaching that he is going to get. So it seems like now, and I hope I'm not being premature on this one, there's a lot of momentum from Miami to avoid losing Kenton Dobson to a flip. And, we had talked about this several weeks ago, that it seems as though Miami did give him the green light that if he reclassifies, they will take him in the 2026 class. Like, they're not trying to make him wait until 2027. They would happily welcome him as a part of the class of 2026. Speaking of that class of 2026, if you guys missed it last night, like right after the news broke, we did an episode for Frederick Saintius, rising star at defensive line out of Naples, Florida, St. John Newman High School. Miami just landed a verbal commit from Fred Saintius yesterday. 6'5", 290-pound defensive lineman, only been playing football for 2 years, and he's getting everybody's attention now. He picked Miami over Florida State and Florida. Both wanted him, and Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan State had started to make late pushes for Saintius. So big verbal commitment. He's a 3-star right now, but I think he'll probably end up with a 4th star a little bit later on in the process, because this is an up and coming prospect who just burst onto the scene recently. So, Miami obviously is going to have to keep playing defense to keep him committed through National Signing Day. But it's a big verbal commit for Miami last night. We did an episode about it yesterday, so check that out if you missed it. We're going to have another episode today. We're going to take a deep dive on what Ruben Bain Jr. is doing this season. And we're going to take a deep dive the way that only Pro Football Focus can. I'm going to be joined later today by Dalton Wasserman, Pro Football Focus analyst and the co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Dalton he's going to help me understand just how well Hurricane Bain has played so far this year. So you guys want to check that out. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Smash that like button. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you later today on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.